So hello and welcome to today's lesson. We're going to proceed with React from where we left, and I'm going to share my screen so that we may continue from the concepts we learned last week. Yeah, so let me share my screen. There we go. Let me share the entire. Good. So I hope my screen is visible and you can all see my screen. So, a moment. Let's see this. Okay, so I hope the screen is visible. Trying to give some people time to join, but we'll continue. Okay, so from where we left last week, we did something on, we introduced React and we looked at the template scaffolded by Vite. We looked at creating a React application. Then we proceeded to discuss JSX, and we said that it allows us to return HTML-like code. I will be exploring more of these. I'm just bringing about the concepts. Excuse. And then we learned about something small on props and React state. And yeah, state with due state. We said the state is data that changes every time, and we gave examples of fetching data from the database, or maybe a user logging in, putting their username, password, and email, and then we are waiting for responses from the database. So state changes, and then we looked at the value, or how we use state with the value, and then the state updater function. For example, in this one we have the count and set count as the state updater function. And then yeah, today we were going to learn about events, okay, event handling and forms, that is controlled inputs. And then we will look at rendering keys in React, which we did. We've done a number of lists, so we'll just look. But the main key component to remember is that wherever we render a list, we normally need to pass this key, which is a unique identifier for the list item that we are rendering, because React does not allow duplicate items to be rendered. And one thing I'd advise is that if we are rendering a list from an array, we should not use the array's index, because it is subject to changes. Let's say, for example, you insert new elements to an array, or you delete an item from an array. You tend to see that when you delete an item, the index shifts. And so to avoid conflicts, we need to use unique identifiers. And for this example, for example, we are using the to-do ID. And then we look at basic side effect and use effect. And then we look at the folder for our project and discuss best practices. And after that, we are going to do something small on our e-commerce project, and I'm going to use some examples to teach some of the concepts for today's lessons. But I normally say that I give you the explanations for this concept, and so that when you come to read them on your own, you might find an easier time, and you might understand them easily. So let's pick from these. We talked about components and props, and now we talked about state, and then we are going to talk about event handlings and forms. We will do a login form, or we'll do a complete form when we'll be updating our application to now also include a database and a server, but I'll discuss the concepts. And for this, so we say control inputs. These are input value bound to state, while uncontrolled inputs use ref, or we can access them dynamically from the DOM, the way we were just doing in pure JavaScript with the document.select item or document.get element by ID. But for these control input, they are bound to state. So, for example, let's choose, we choose controlled for predictable state, and we have an example of a form here. For example, the function name form. Then we have the const name, set name, use state with the default value of an empty string. Then we have the function to handle submit. We have const handle submit, which is an arrow function. We said we normally prevent default, which some default behavior may be maybe a page refresh for a button click or a submission. So we prevent the default behavior, and for this now, our handle submit alerts that are submitted, and then it logs the name or alerts the name that has been submitted. And in it we submit, excuse, I'm experiencing some cold. Okay, let's see. Okay. And so our function returns a JSX with a form. The input we call, on submit we call the handle submit function, and then it has a label which is name, and then an input which accepts the name. And when the name change, we set the value of the name with the event.target.value to equals the name. And when the button is clicked, now it renders this function. You can run this and see, but we'll see an example of this when we'll be updating our e-commerce platform. And then let's move to lists. We've seen some lists and how we rendered. I've emphasized that for lists, we need these key attributes while we are rendering them, because React does not allow duplicate items to be rendered. So they need these unique identifier. And also on this, we are also going to discuss about conditional rendering, where we have mainly two methods. We have using the AND operator, and we have using this ternary operator. We look at an example of both. So let me open my terminal. Okay, let me open the project that we were doing last time. Okay. Yeah, we were on the first React. Yeah, it opens. So let me copy these in a browser. Initially that was there, and we export the default function app. So we'll create the function app, then export it. Okay, yeah, we'll export the default app. So for our app, initially it's returning nothing, or a fragment with nothing in the meantime. So we want to elaborate use effect hook, but we'll also be using the use state. So in our structure, in the SRC, we'll create a folder and have the components. And in these components, I'll create one folder for products list .jsx, which will be fetching, in our project will be fetching products from fetch to API. So we'll first import use state, we'll use it, and use effect from React. Then we'll create the functional component products list. Remember we said the name of the function should be capitalized, and also the name of the folder should be capitalized and bear the same name as the component that we are creating, and also export the default product list. Okay, good. So our state for products will live inside our main application. So here we'll declare the states. So let's import. Actually, even our products will live inside this. So let's import these here. We are using state and using effect. So we'll have const products and the setter set products as use state with an empty array, and then we'll have a const is loading, and set is loading. Sorry. Yeah, use state with a default state of false, and we'll also have an error which might arise. These are different states that our application might be in. So we'll hit an error when trying to fetch these products, and then we set them to null initially, and let me just define our URL here, const URL, which will be the fixed API, and then products. So we are using the use effect, so we call it that way. Pass in a callback of an arrow function. And so I wanted to demonstrate something, or to explain something with use effect, because we talked about async await in JavaScript, and we said that they return promises. So this use effect also is treated as a promise also, and and no, it is an asynchronous. Sorry, it is synchronous. That is it just runs non-blockingly, but we need to use the fetch API, which is an asynchronous function, and we cannot use await or await in a synchronous function. So we'll declare this. So we'll have an immediately invoked function here. So we declare an async function. Oh, let's just call it async arrow function, and in here we do a try catch. So const response equals the await fetch, and we pass in our URL, and then we do the const data equals to await the response .json, and then we set the products to the fetched products, but we might throw some error if the response fails. So if not response .ok, we throw the new error, and so we say oops, something went wrong. Okay, and then we set the products to the data that was just fetched, and we catch any error here also. We're catching the error, and we set the error to the error that's thrown, error.message, and we include finally that always sets the is loading to false. So set is loading to false initially, and so async, and we call our async function using those braces, and here on this use effect we need to pass in the dependency array, and for our case we can pass in the URL as our dependency for this. So yeah, so we are fetching products from our URL, and then we are setting the products to that. We're also setting the error and setting is loading. Some of the states that we can have in our product state. Yeah, so great. And for this, after this, we might want to return some things. So if the state is loading, so we can return and tell the user that we are fetching products. So loading. Normally you might see this as a spinner in some applications, and then if we throw an error, so we can return this error. So we'll return then, yeah, so we return the error. So it's like our project has begun. So that's it, and then we come to our product list. So here we need to render a list of these products that we fetched. Remember we talked about these we talked about props in React. So we need to pass those products as props. So we are passing the products, and we'll pass in them when we call these product list component in our app.jsx. And for these we will be returning so for the products we'll map through each. Okay, sorry, so products.map, and then we are mapping through each product, and we'll be returning okay, sorry, let me do this. Let's return this in an URL. So we'll be returning an URL. Sorry about this. So let's return this in a URL or in an unordered list. Sorry, so we map through the products, and excuse about this. A minute. Oh, sorry, screen not visible. Let me stop sharing and reshare again. Sorry about that. Let me reshare the screen. I don't know what normally happens, or it's maybe when I create some new things. So let me stop sharing and share again. Let me share my entire screen. I don't know from what point you started losing me. Okay, so yeah, okay, so sorry for the inconvenience. Let me hope it is now visible. We were here. So I created this e-commerce application in which I cleared the default uh, code which is given in the app.jsx, and okay, we can rebuild this. So I cleared this app.jsx, I cleared app.css to have nothing, and I cleared index.css, and now I was creating a product list. But let me redo this for importance of the screen was not visible, so I hope now it's visible. Okay, so let's continue, and sorry for that. I was okay, so here we imported, we are still on the use effect, so I imported the use state and use effect from React, and then we import the app.css because we'll be applying some styling. So import the app.css, and then so we create our function app, which we will be exporting. So we'll export a default app, and then here we'll create the different states that we'll have. So we'll have const products and set products with an empty array. Then we'll have const is loading, which will render conditionally, and set is loading with an initial state of true, and const error, and set error with an initial state of null. And we said with the use effect, so we call the use effect hook and pass it a callback, and inside that okay, let me declare our URL. So const URL is the fixed API. So for this we are going to pass an async function. So async, and it will be an immediately invoked function. So and we'll have the try catch block. So const response is equals to the await, and we call our fetch with the URL, and then yeah, so if the response fails, we throw a new error. Let's put okay. So if not, let's put okay. We throw a new error. Something went wrong while fetching products, and so our data will be const data is equals the await resp.json. Then again we set our products to the data that is fetch. Okay. Then we'll have a catch where we'll catch any error, and we'll set error to the error.message, and then we'll have a finally block which sets our is loading to false. Okay, so and remember we have to call that function with those braces, and we pass in the dependencies array. For case we'll have the URL as our dependency, but in this array you'll need to list all your dependencies that your application is depending on. Excuse. And so yeah, so that's our function. And in this, so let's say we have to return these states for error and is loading, so we pass in some useful message. So we'll have is if is loading, you might want to return a paragraph and tell the user that we are loading or fetching data. So let's have just the loading state. Because these processes might be slow and it might take a few seconds, then instead of a user just staying there waiting for the response and thinking maybe the app is slow, we give them something to wait. And also if we have an error, so we return the error. Good. And then in the meantime, let's return an empty fragment in the meantime. So yeah, so let's leave it at that, and then let's come to our products.jsx, and we'll call this we'll declare the function product lists. And then we talked about props, so we'll be passing the products as props to this. Remember our props live, or our state lives in the main app. So and then we export this default products list. Then so let's come here, we'll return a URL, and sorry, I will return an unordered list, sorry, not a URL. And we map through the products. So products.map. Remember we talked about these JavaScript array methods. So return that implicitly, and then we return a list item with the key which will be equal to our product ID, like that. And for this we'll return the product image. So return the image, the src we set it to the product.image. We have interacted with this fake API store, and so the shape of the data that it returns, oh yeah, so the p will be the that one, and we might give it an default width of that 100%. We'll just be creating the components, and styling will do it later. And so in this we'll have a div here, and so here we'll return the price and the title. So p.title will also return so we'll also return the price. So p.price, and yeah, let's return it to that. And finally we might add some description, and dot description, and not all. So we might slice some for just demonstrating, and maybe we could have, after that we can have, but okay, let me not introduce this at now because I haven't touched about something else and I don't want to introduce new concepts. And so we can have a button, and just leave it at that as add to cart, and we'll develop the logic for this. Yeah, so let's come back to our app. We will import these components that we created, and we are importing the product list from components, product list.jsx, and here we say the normal way we render this, so we can have these as okay, so we can have these as a h1, and with just the products. This is just a makeshift, but will advance the project. So we call it like this. We call the product list, then we pass in the props. Will be equal to the products, and that way. So we close it, and let's run. And see, so we had this running. Let me close that. So had this. Yeah, let me close that. Okay. Yeah. And let's drop this down here. And so let's run with npm run dev, and see what our application does. A few minutes. But after use state is what I wanted to illustrate for that, and maybe something small on the intermediate. But we just covered this like with the use state, but look at the cleanup in the use state, because not all functions or everything will require the cleanup. Like the example I've just showed to fetch data, but this one is a good example to look at. So let's see. Okay, open it just, yeah. Yeah, okay, we have an issue with the import. It's the naming. So ours was product lists, and okay, product lists, products list, sorry. Okay, photos of, oh, even the path just depended on the autocomplete. So let's correct that. So from the where yeah, so the components, and that it was products list, and let's see. Yeah, so that's just an example of how we fetch data. It is styled, but we will just look at styling, or we can add some default styling. But when it's refreshing, you can see the loading state being displayed. And let's say, for example, we had a fake URL, and see displaying the error. Uh, it failed to fetch products, so we are throwing the error that came from that. So this one, throw something went wrong, comes or catches any crashes from the API. So I've fetched as failed to fetch. Let's restore that. And that's an example of where we use the use state and use effect. And it's one hook that you will be mainly using in your application. So you need to understand that and how we return its dependencies, URL, the dependency array, and what we input into that. And before I complete this class, let me talk something about this use ref. And in our next class, we'll talk about the use memo, use callback, which helps us avoid expensive recomputation, but I might touch them briefly and use reducer, so that in our next class we can talk about the reducer and do an example on reducer, and use concepts, use context, because they go in hand. So let me talk about these uh, the use ref, and share this. These on these that one. Yeah, so we had the use memo, use callback, and use ref, but I'll talk about the use ref as discussed here. And we normally use it to access or manipulate the DOM directly. For example, uh, for holding mutatable values that don't trigger reminders. But the main case that in which it is used is for these DOM references. Let's say, for example, in our forms, like for example, for the to do forms, or maybe for login forms, when a user enters value, the input field continues to remain, that is, it continues to remain focused, so that to ease experience with the application, function focus input. So we have the constraint ref, and for this we are using use effect to set our ref. So the ref dot current, then we optionally set the focus with the dot focus, and then we return the user input, and then the ref, we pass in the ref that we declared here. So that's majorly how we use it, but we'll see this in application. And for use memo and use callback, which help us to avoid expensive recomputation. So memoization helps us when passing callback to memorize children, or preventing expensive recalculation, avoiding premature avoid premature optimization for your application. That is, don't overuse these callbacks because you might think you are improving user or speed of your application, and then you just end up causing more trouble to users. But let me expound on this. So that is, I had this slide titled Performance Optimization that was discussing use memo, use callback, and API and such, but we are mainly going to talk about these use memo and use callbacks. So, for example, we have an example of use memo here where we are storing filtered products. So we have the const filtered use memo takes in a callback, an arrow function callback, which returns let's say, for example, filtering through product as a user enters with a product name, maybe filtering by price. So we could use this. So for example, we could return the items.filter item, and then item.includes the query, which is user input in our search input. And it takes in the dependency for the items and queries. These items could be our product. And why it matters? This is because why we need this performance optimization. We need to identify unnecessary renders and also apply the right memoization hook and decide when to handle data locally versus when to handle data on the server. So why this matters is because as applications grow, expensive calculations and unstable functions references silently slows the user interface. Use memo and use callback gives you precise control over what reruns and what re-renders. I remember when we were introducing React, we said that as opposed to older applications, React now compares what has changed on your code against and only re-renders what has changed. If nothing changes, the application does not re-render. So you might find there might be some user interactions that might trigger some unnecessary re-renders, and that's what we want to optimize. And for this, we were going to explain why components re-render and why it matters. We are going to see use memo for catching computed values, and we're going to see use callback for catching functional references, and we are going to see the React.memo for preventing child re-renders, and we were going to look at local versus API-based sort and such. And then we were going to look at caching, throttling, and pagination, but I'll only want to talk about the use memo and use callback. So for example, why React renders and why it matters. So every time a component renders, so React redefines every function and recalculates every expressions and also re-renders all children by default. So these are usual. Okay. So on every render, we have React redefines every function, creates a new reference, and then recalculates every expression and even expensive calculations, re-renders all child components even if props are unchanged. Uh, so this is usually fast, but it becomes expensive when calculation is heavy. For example, let's look at when we are maybe filtering over 10,000 or hundreds of thousands of items, which may be computationally expensive. For example, when we were talking about this now filtering, let's say a user is filtering products, and then so a function is passed as a prop to many child components. We'll talk about passing component as a prop when we'll be advancing these and working on these add to product or add to cart functionality, where we'll see we will pass the add to cart function here as a prop to this cart product or to cart product list item. So Okay, so and then we see that two hooks will solve this problem. That is the use memo, which catches computed value, and the use callback, which catches functional reference. Remember, don't confuse this with use ref, which we said we normally use it to access the DOM directly and mainly for focusing user inputs. So we have an example of use memo. So using catching computed values. So for example, use memo runs a calculation only when its dependencies change and reuses cached value, cached results otherwise. So for example, we have the const filtered, still our same example. We use the memo and pass in the arrow function as a callback where we are returning the filtered items. So return items.filter, iterating through these items, and then each item dot to lowercase dot include the query dot to lowercase. These we'll see how we set these queries, and we pass in the dependencies for these, which are the items and the query. We'll have a look at this, and we will reuse these function. So these returns the results of the computation. So the function inside cannot take arguments. So remember, that's why this callback has no arguments. Okay, it reads from the surrounding scope and used for expensive derived data. That is, for example, sorted or filtered lists or computed totals. For example, let's say calculating the total for our cart, or maybe let's say we were working with a user dashboard where we'll be calculating the total revenues for the day. Yeah, so let's have a look at use callback. So this is used for caching function references. So use callback returns the same function reference between renders as long as the dependencies haven't changed. So an example is a const handle increment. Have use callback. Then you have the arrow function as a callback. And then here we are setting the counter, increasing it with 1. Have empty dependency for every render. So we have a reminder here that every render without use callback creates a new function object and a new reference. So if a child component receives a new reference on every rendering, it re-renders even if nothing changes. So we have a comparison of use memo and use callback, and think of it this way: use memo helps us to save the answer, and use callback helps us to save the question. As we've said, this one now we use it to cache our functions, and this one we use to cache our computed results. So this comparison, the use memo returns the results of a computation. Use callback returns a function itself. We have purpose. So this one is for caching derived data. And then this one is the use callback is for stable function reference for child props. And so the syntax is almost the same as given there. And so we use the use memo when calculating expensive expressions, and we use this use callback when we want to memorize this child function which are passed as props. Okay, so we have an example here. We have React.memo plus callback. That is the full picture and its use. So React.memo wraps a component, add skips and skips renders, rendering it without its props, and when these props haven't changed, that is, it just conducts a shallow comparison. Have an example of a const product card. We call in the memo, and we pass in our function product card with its props, the name and the on add, and return a button which adds this product, let's say simulating our add to cart. So it has a const handle add to cart, and then we call the use callback we're passing in the name of the product, and then setting to cart this product we have here. So that's it. We'll see more examples of this. I was just highlighting them. So have a nice evening. I think I'll end this at that.